They smiled when I signed the papers, not warmly. No, their smiles were tight, practiced, the kind that come when people think they're winning something. But I remember the look in their eyes, the satisfaction, sharp and clear, far better than I remember what the papers actually said. Strange, isn't it? How betrayal leaves a clearer imprint than the words that seal it. At 67, you think you've learned most of life's lessons. Knees that predict storms, friends who have moved to smaller apartments or quieter places, grandchildren who call less often each year. But I didn't expect this. Not from my own son. I had come because Robert insisted it would be good for me to understand my finances better. His words carried that certain tone they always did, the one that sounded like concern but felt like condescension. Still, I drove the 20 minutes to his office building downtown, gripping the steering wheel perhaps a bit too tightly. The glass doors felt too modern, too cold under my hands. I'd visited countless times. I trusted him. It happened between signing one page and reaching for the next. A hesitation, small but sharp. The notary's voice saying something about irrevocable trust, and my son's hand on my shoulder, gentle, reassuring, saying, "It's just paperwork, Mom. This protects you." There was no time to read everything. My reading glasses were smudged, the words swam. I signed where he pointed, trusting that blood meant safety. For a moment afterward, I sat there, staring at the neat stack of papers as if they were the sky falling. "Mom, you okay?" "That's perfect." Robert's voice broke first, and then his wife Jennifer's laugh followed, bright and brittle. "You're all set now. No more worrying about bills or maintenance or any of that." Not cruel, not quite. Just efficient, as if I were a problem they'd finally solved. Like checking something off a list they'd been carrying for years. I tried to gather the papers, but Robert slid them smoothly into a folder. "I'll keep these safe," he said. "You don't need to worry about them anymore." Someone should have explained more clearly then. Someone should have paused, made eye contact, asked if I understood what had just happened. But they stood where they were, satisfied, already moving on to dinner plans, whispering to each other like I couldn't hear them. "She signed everything," Jennifer murmured. "No pushback at all." "I told you," my son replied, as if my whole life had been leading to this moment of convenience. I managed to stand. The room swayed, but I kept my voice steady. Pride does that. It pulls you upright, even when your heart protests. "I should get home," I said, though I wasn't sure where home was anymore. Robert finally looked at me, his smile tight, pleased. "Mom, you did great. This is really going to simplify things." But his tone betrayed something more than simplification. It betrayed finality. I didn't answer. I was staring at the folder in his hands, at the thick stack of papers I'd just signed. Too thick for something simple. Too complete for something that was just about helping me. My son didn't notice my silence. He busied himself organizing his desk, eager to move forward to whatever came next. I let him talk because fighting would have taken more strength than I had at that moment. Outside, the city lights were beginning to glow, the air thick with the smell of exhaust and evening rain approaching. It should have felt familiar. Instead, everything looked faintly wrong, as if I'd walked out of a building I'd entered but hadn't truly left. Only later, when I was driving home alone, did I realize I should have asked more questions, should have read more carefully, should have noticed that something had been waiting for me the moment I walked into that office. I gripped the steering wheel, breathing slowly, letting a dark suspicion take shape. It wasn't help. And the way they smiled so easily, so quickly, told me more than they ever intended to say. Morning arrived with the kind of heaviness that makes simple tasks feel monumental. I woke before dawn, my mind already moving, replaying yesterday's events with uncomfortable clarity. When you're my age, sleep becomes unreliable. An old friend who visits less often, stays for shorter periods. I lay there for a moment, letting my bedroom ceiling come into focus, feeling the weight of what I'd signed settle over me more heavily than the quilts. Getting out of bed was automatic. Every movement carried yesterday with it, the pen in my hand, Robert's voice, Jennifer's laugh. I held onto the dresser, steadying myself as I walked to the kitchen. The house felt different today. Not unsafe, but newly uncertain, as if all its familiar corners had been rearranged overnight. Perhaps it was just me who had changed, seeing things more clearly than I had allowed myself yesterday. I made coffee, though my hands felt oddly disconnected. I stood at the counter, breathing slowly, waiting for clarity to arrive with the caffeine. When it didn't, I walked to the kitchen table where I kept my bills, my checkbook, my small file of important documents. Everything was where I'd left it, but something felt wrong. I opened my checkbook. The balance looked right, then I tried to log into my bank account online. My password didn't work. I tried again and again. A message appeared. Please contact your account administrator. Administrator, the word sat there on the screen, cold and foreign. I'd had this account for 42 years. I was the administrator. I tried my savings account, same message. My investment account, the one my late husband had set up decades ago, same thing. My heart began beating faster, not from panic exactly, but from recognition. I had lived with money my whole adult life, managed budgets through lean years and comfortable ones, paid for a house, raised a son, buried a husband. I knew what access looked like. And this wasn't it. Around 9, I called the bank. The woman who answered had a kind voice, the kind that makes you feel safe telling the truth. I'm having trouble accessing my accounts, I said carefully. Let me pull up your information. Can I have your account number? I gave it to her, heard typing, then a pause. Mrs. Blackwell, I see here that your accounts were transferred to an irrevocable trust yesterday at 4:47 p.m. The trustee is listed as Robert Blackwell. The kitchen felt suddenly smaller. Transferred? Yes, ma'am. You would need to contact the trustee for any account access or transactions. We can no longer make changes at your request. I swallowed. Can you tell me what that means? An irrevocable trust? Another pause, gentler this time. It means the assets are no longer in your name. The trustee has full control. Ma'am, you signed papers authorizing this, correct? I signed papers, I said softly, but I didn't understand. I'm very sorry, Mrs. Blackwell. Once it's irrevocable, we can't reverse it. You will need a lawyer for that. I thanked her and hung up. The silence afterward felt heavier than before. I stood by the window, staring at my small garden, the roses I'd planted 20 years ago, the bird feeder my husband built. My home, my life. And somewhere in that stack of papers yesterday, I'd given it all away. Robert had said it was to protect me. But protect me from what? From myself. I touched the window lightly, my breath fogging the glass. At my age, people assume you don't understand financial matters. They assume you're easily confused. They assume you need help. They assume wrong. Today, the truth was clearer than any signature. Something wasn't right, and someone had planned it long before yesterday. The attorney's office smelled of leather and old paper, a combination that reminded me of my husband's study. I sat in the waiting room with my purse pressed against my chest, trying not to show how much effort it had taken to get here. Asking for help has never come easily to me. Pride is both armor and cage. When Ms. Patricia Chen finally called me in, I felt myself straighten instinctively. She was younger than I expected, perhaps in her early 40s, with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to see past the careful composure I'd arranged on my face. Mrs. Blackwell, she said, shaking my hand warmly. Please sit. How can I help you today? It took me a moment to speak, not because I lacked words, but because saying them aloud would confirm what I already suspected. I think I've made a terrible mistake, I began, and then the whole story spilled out. She listened without interrupting. No judgment in her expression, no impatience, just careful attention. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, her fingers steepled beneath her chin. Mrs. Blackwell, do you have copies of the papers you signed? No, my son kept them all. She nodded slowly. That's common in these situations. Did anyone explain to you what an irrevocable trust means? He said it would protect me. From what? I hesitated. He didn't say exactly. Ms. Chen pulled a legal pad closer. An irrevocable trust means you've permanently transferred ownership of your assets. The trustee, in this case your son, has complete control. You can't access the money without his permission. You can't change the terms. It's permanent unless we can prove undue influence, fraud, or incompetence at the time of signing. The room felt colder. I wasn't incompetent. I don't believe you were, she said gently. But that's what makes this difficult. These trusts are designed to be permanent. They have legitimate uses for estate planning, tax purposes, but they can also be used to, she paused, choosing her words carefully, to remove someone's financial independence. He's my son, I whispered. Why would he do this? Sometimes family members convince themselves they're acting in your best interest. Sometimes it's about control. Sometimes, she hesitated again, it's about inheritance. That word landed like a stone in still water, ripples spreading outward. What can I do? I asked. First, I need to get copies of everything you signed. I'll file a request with the notary and your bank. Then we'll look for any evidence that you didn't fully understand what you were signing, that information was withheld, or that there was coercion. He didn't force me. Coercion isn't always physical, Mrs. Blackwell. It can be subtle, time pressure, confusing language, emotional manipulation. Did he rush you? I thought back, the smudged glasses, the swimming words. I couldn't read clearly. He said it was just paperwork. She made a note. That may be enough. You'll also need to document your mental competence. I'd like you to undergo a cognitive assessment to prove you were and are capable of managing your affairs. The suggestion stung slightly, but I understood. All right. One more question, she said, meeting my eyes. What's your relationship with your son like? I looked down at my hands. They were wrinkled now, spotted with age, but steady. It used to be good, very good, but lately? I trailed off, searching for words. He's been different, impatient. He talks to me like I'm a child. When did that start? About a year ago, after his father-in-law passed away. Ms. Chen's eyebrows rose slightly. His wife inherited? Yes, quite a lot, I think. They bought a new house, new cars. Robert quit his job. She wrote something down, underlining it twice. Mrs. Blackwell, I'm going to be very direct with you. What you've described is a pattern I've seen before. Adult children sometimes convince themselves that their parents' assets are essentially theirs already, just delayed. They get impatient. They make plans based on money they don't have yet. You think he did this for money? I think we need to find out what he's planning to do with your assets now that he controls them. The weight of that settled over me. My home, my savings, my husband's life insurance, carefully saved for emergencies, for dignity in old age. All of it now in Robert's hands. The cognitive assessment took 3 hours. I sat in a sterile medical office, answering questions, solving puzzles, recalling word lists, drawing clock faces. The neuropsychologist was kind but thorough, his pen scratching notes as I worked through each task. Some questions were easy. Who is the current president? What year is it? Count backward from 100 by sevens. Some were harder, remembering 3 objects after answering other questions, drawing complex shapes from memory, explaining the similarities between concepts. When we finished, he looked at me with something like respect. Mrs. Blackwell, your cognitive function is excellent, well above average for your age group. There's absolutely no indication of dementia, confusion, or impairment. Relief washed through me, though I'd known what he would find. Can you put that in writing? I'll have a full report ready by tomorrow. Your attorney can use it to establish that you were fully competent when you signed those documents, which actually works in your favor for challenging them. How so? If you weren't impaired, then the question becomes, why didn't you understand what you were signing? That shifts focus to how the information was presented to you, whether you were given time to review, whether key facts were disclosed. I nodded slowly, understanding. The assessment wasn't just about proving I was capable. It was about proving I'd been misled. On my way out, I stopped at the reception desk to schedule payment. The woman behind the counter smiled. Already taken care of. Your son called this morning and paid by credit card. My blood went cold. My son called? Yes, Robert Blackwell. He said he wanted to make sure you were taken care of. I thanked her mechanically and walked to my car. Once inside, I sat gripping the steering wheel, my heart pounding. He knew. He knew I was seeing a neuropsychologist, which meant he was monitoring something: my calendar, my phone, my movements. I thought back over the past weeks. The new tablet he'd given me to make video calls easier. The way he'd insisted on setting it up for me, installing apps, syncing it with my phone. Had he installed something? Some way to track me? The thought made my skin crawl. I drove home slowly, checking my rearview mirror more often than necessary. The house looked the same when I pulled into the driveway, but I no longer felt safe inside it. Inside, I went straight to the tablet. I didn't know much about technology, but I knew how to search. 20 minutes later, I'd found it, a family tracking app, quietly running in the background, sharing my location with Robert's phone. My hands trembled as I deleted it. Then I went through every device, every app, every setting. I changed passwords. I turned off location services. I felt like I was digging through my own life, finding surveillance I'd never consented to, care I'd never asked for. By the time I finished, it was dark outside. I sat at the kitchen table, breathing slowly, trying to calm the anger building in my chest. He'd been watching me, monitoring me, treating me like a problem that needed managing. And I'd let him because I'd thought it was love. Ms. Chen called 3 days later with news that made my stomach clench. "I've received the documents from the notary," she said. "Mrs. Blackwell, I need you to come to my office. There's something you need to see." I drove there immediately, my mind racing through possibilities, none of them good. She spread the papers across her desk when I arrived. "Look at this." I leaned closer. It was the trust document, page after page of dense legal text. She pointed to a section near the end. "This clause here gives the trustee, your son, the authority to sell any and all assets held in the trust, including real property." "Real property?" My voice came out thin. "Your house." The room tilted slightly. "He can sell my house?" "According to this, yes, without your permission. The proceeds would remain in the trust, but he'd have control over them." "Why would he?" I couldn't finish the sentence. Ms. Chen's expression was grave. "There's more. This section establishes his compensation as trustee. 5% of all assets annually, plus reimbursement for any expenses related to trust management." I did the math quickly in my head. 5% of everything I owned, every year for as long as the trust existed. "How long does it exist?" I whispered. "For your lifetime, and then according to the distribution terms, which I'm still reviewing." She turned to another page. "And here's what concerns me most. There's a provision that allows him to move you to assisted living if he, quote, deems it necessary for your health and safety, with costs paid from the trust." The full picture crystallized with awful clarity. He could take my house. He could take a percentage of everything I had. He could move me into a facility, paying for it with my own money while he lived in the home I'd bought, the home my husband and I had filled with 40 years of life. "This can't be legal," I said. "It's legal if you knowingly consented to it. That's what we need to prove, that you didn't, that you weren't given time to review, that key provisions weren't explained, that he rushed you or misled you about what you were signing." He said it was just paperwork to protect me. "Did he explain any of these specific provisions?" "No, nothing." She made a note. "That's good. That's what we need. Did anyone else witness the signing besides the notary?" "Jennifer, his wife. We'll need to depose her." "And the notary, we need to establish exactly what was said during the signing, whether you were given an opportunity to read the full document, whether you were advised to seek independent counsel." "I wasn't." "That's significant. When someone is giving away this much control, especially to a family member, any reputable attorney would insist they get independent advice." She gathered the papers. "Mrs. Blackwell, I want to be honest with you. Overturning an irrevocable trust is extremely difficult, but we have a chance. Your cognitive assessment helps. The complexity of the document helps. The lack of independent counsel helps. The fact that he's your son and stood to benefit actually helps because it raises questions about undue influence. How long will this take? Months, maybe longer, and it won't be cheap. I thought of my accounts locked away, controlled by Robert. How do I pay you? She smiled slightly. I'll take this on contingency. If we win, I take a percentage of what we recover. If we lose, you pay nothing. Why would you do that? Her expression softened. Because I've seen too many older people taken advantage of by the people who should be protecting them, and because I think you have a good case. I felt tears threatening but pushed them back. What do I do now? Go home. Document everything. If Robert contacts you, keep records. If he tries to access your house or pressure you about anything, call me immediately. And Mrs. Blackwell? She met my eyes. Be careful. Once he realizes you're fighting back, things may get difficult. I drove home as evening descended, her warning echoing in my mind. The house was dark when I arrived. I turned on every light, suddenly afraid of shadows. I was about to make myself tea when I noticed something. The back door, the one leading to the garden, was unlocked. I always locked it, always. My heart began to race. I walked through the house slowly, checking each room. Nothing seemed disturbed. Nothing was missing that I could see, but someone had been here. I could feel it in the air, in the slight wrongness of objects not quite where I'd left them. The way a book on the coffee table sat at a different angle. The way the hall closet door wasn't completely closed. I called Ms. Chen. She answered immediately. He was in my house, I said. How do you know? The back door was unlocked. Things are moved. Small things, but I notice. Do you have somewhere else you can stay tonight? I thought of friends, of my sister 3 states away, of the women I used to work with at the library. But going to them felt like admitting defeat, like running. I'll be all right. Change your locks tomorrow, first thing, and Mrs. Blackwell, document this. Take photos of anything that seems different. Save this call log. Everything matters now. After we hung up, I walked through my house one more time, this time taking photos. The book, the closet door, the back door lock, which showed tiny scratches around the keyhole, fresh and bright against the aged brass. Someone had picked it. My son had let himself into my home and gone through my things, looking for what? Evidence that I was fighting back, documents I might have hidden. I made tea with shaking hands and sat at the kitchen table until dawn, too afraid to sleep, too angry to cry. By morning light, I'd made a decision. He wanted me to be weak, confused, easy to control. He'd built an entire legal structure around that assumption. I would prove him wrong. The locksmith arrived at 8 the next morning. He was an older man with kind eyes who didn't ask questions when I requested new locks on every door, including the garden gate. Someone bothering you? He asked quietly as he worked. My son, I said. He nodded as if this explained everything. I see that more than you'd think. Adult kids who think they own the place before they actually do. That's exactly it. When he finished, he handed me a set of keys. I'd recommend not giving copies to anyone, not right away at least. I won't. After he left, I walked through the house again, this time with a different feeling. The locks were new. The doors were mine again, small victories, but they mattered. I spent the rest of the morning documenting everything I could think of. I wrote down every conversation with Robert from the past year, every comment about my finances, every suggestion that I was declining or needed help. I created a timeline, careful and detailed, showing how his behavior had shifted after his father-in-law's death and the inheritance Jennifer received. Around noon, my phone rang. Robert, I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a text. Mom tried calling. Need to discuss some paperwork. Can I come by? More paperwork. Always more paperwork. I texted back. Not today, I'm not feeling well. Tomorrow, then, important. I'll let you know. The text stopped. I knew he'd be frustrated, maybe suspicious. Good, let him wonder. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in months. I called my sister, Margaret. Helen, her voice was surprised, warm. It's been too long. I know, I'm sorry, I trailed off, unsure how to explain. What's wrong? You sound upset. And then I told her everything. The papers, the trust, the locked accounts, the tracking app, the unlocked door, she listened in growing silence. When I finished, her voice was hard with anger. That boy has lost his way. Margaret, no, I'm serious. He's stealing from you, Helen, under the guise of helping. I'm trying to fight it. I have a lawyer. Good, what do you need from me? The question caught me off guard. I don't know, I just needed to tell someone. You need backup. You need witnesses. I'm coming out there. You don't have to. I'm coming. I'll be there in 3 days. And Helen, don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. Don't trust him, not even a little. After we hung up, I felt lighter somehow. I wasn't alone in this. Margaret was sharp, practical, unafraid of confrontation. Things Robert had probably counted on me not having. The next few days passed quietly, too quietly. Robert stopped calling. No texts, no visits. It was the kind of silence that feels deliberate, strategic. Ms. Chen called to say she'd filed a formal petition to have the trust reviewed by the court. He'll be served with papers in the next day or two. Be prepared for his reaction. What kind of reaction? Anger, defensiveness. He may try to pressure you to drop it. Don't engage. Refer him to me. Margaret arrived on a Wednesday afternoon, her small rental car pulling into my driveway like cavalry arriving. She hugged me tightly. Let me see this house he thinks he can take from you. I showed her around, and she shook her head with each room. 40 years you've lived here. He has no right. That evening, we sat at the kitchen table, and she helped me organize everything. Documents, timelines, photos. She was methodical, asking questions I hadn't thought to ask, finding gaps in my memory, helping me fill them in. You know what this is really about? She said. Jennifer's money is probably gone. They spent it. Now they need yours. The thought hadn't occurred to me, but it made horrible sense. The new house, the new cars, Robert quitting his job. They'd been living beyond their means, assuming my assets would eventually be theirs. They'd just decided not to wait. The next morning, a courier arrived with a certified letter. Margaret watched as I opened it. It was from Robert's attorney. A response to Ms. Chen's petition, denying all allegations and requesting dismissal. But it was the final paragraph that made my hands shake. Given Mrs. Blackwell's recent erratic behavior and confusion regarding financial matters, the trustee believes it may be necessary to evaluate her living situation for her own safety and well-being. Margaret read over my shoulder. He's threatening to put you in a home. He can't really do that, can he? Not without a court order, but he can try. She pulled out her phone. I'm calling your lawyer. Ms. Chen's voice was grim when Margaret explained. This is typical intimidation. He's trying to scare her into backing down. Don't let it work. But it was working. The threat hung over me like a storm cloud. He was willing to take everything, my money, my home, my freedom, to win. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to the house settle, thinking about all the ways a life can be dismantled by someone who claims to love you. Margaret appeared in my doorway around midnight. Can't sleep either? No. She came in and sat on the edge of my bed like she used to do when we were girls. You're going to win this, Helen. You know why? Why? Because you're fighting for something real. He's just fighting for money. And money always loses to truth eventually. I wanted to believe her. But lying there in the dark, listening to my sister breathe beside me, I couldn't shake the feeling that truth was a luxury people like me could no longer afford. The deposition was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. Ms. Chen prepared me carefully, explaining what to expect, how to answer, what traps Robert's attorney might set. Just tell the truth, she said. Don't elaborate, don't guess. If you don't remember something, say so. If you don't understand a question, ask them to rephrase. Margaret drove me to the attorney's office. My hands were steady, but my heart wasn't. Robert was already there when we arrived, sitting in a conference room with his attorney, a sharp-eyed woman in an expensive suit. He didn't meet my eyes when I entered, just stared at the table, jaw tight. The court reporter set up her equipment. Ms. Chen sat beside me. Margaret waited outside. Robert's attorney began. Mrs. Blackwell, can you state your full name for the record? Helen Marie Blackwell. And your date of birth? March 14, 1958. Thank you. Mrs. Blackwell, do you understand why we're here today? Yes, I'm trying to undo something I shouldn't have signed. You signed documents creating an irrevocable trust with your son as trustee, correct? Yes. Were you forced to sign these documents? No, but just yes or no, please. Were you physically forced? No. Did anyone threaten you? No. Did anyone prevent you from reading the documents? I hesitated. I couldn't see clearly. My glasses were smudged. But you could have cleaned them, correct? I suppose. Did anyone stop you from asking questions? No, but I didn't know what questions to ask. Mrs. Blackwell, you have a college degree, correct? Yes. You worked as a librarian for 30 years? Yes. So you're educated, capable of reading and understanding documents? Legal documents are different. Yes or no, Mrs. Blackwell? Are you capable of reading? Ms. Chen leaned forward. Objection. Argumentative. Robert's attorney smiled slightly. I'll rephrase. Mrs. Blackwell, did you read the trust document before signing? Not all of it, Robert said. Yes or no? No, not all of it. Why not? I looked at Robert. He was still staring at the table, but his jaw was clenched so tightly I could see the muscle jump. Because my son told me it was just paperwork, that I didn't need to worry about the details. But you trusted him? Yes. So you chose to sign without reading, based on trust. The trap was obvious now, but I'd walked into it. I trusted him to tell me the truth. And what truth do you believe he didn't tell you? I took a breath. That I was giving away control of everything I own, that he could sell my house without asking me, that he could move me into a home against my will, that he would profit from managing my money. These provisions were all in the document you signed, correct? Yes, but I didn't know. You didn't know because you chose not to read it, correct? Ms. Chen objected again, but the damage was done. The attorney had made me look like a competent person who'd simply made a bad choice, not someone who'd been misled. We broke for lunch. I felt defeated, hollowed out. You did fine, Ms. Chen said, but she didn't sound convincing. Margaret took my hand. It's not over yet. That afternoon, it was Robert's turn. He sat in the same chair I had, looking composed, confident. Ms. Chen began gently. Mr. Blackwell, what was your purpose in having your mother sign these trust documents? To protect her. She's getting older. I wanted to make sure her finances were managed properly. Did you explain to her that she would lose access to her own accounts? I told her I would be managing things for her. Did you explain that you would receive 5% annually as compensation? A pause. That's standard for trustees. Did you explain it to her? I don't recall specifically. Did you tell her you could sell her house? The trust has provisions for various scenarios. That's not what I asked. Did you tell your mother in clear language that you could sell her home without her permission? It was in the document. Mr. Blackwell, yes or no, did you verbally explain that provision to her? His jaw tight, just like in the morning. No. Why not? She wouldn't have understood the legal complexities. Or she would have refused to sign. Objection, Robert's attorney said. Speculation. Ms. Chen moved on. Mr. Blackwell, did you advise your mother to seek independent legal counsel before signing? No. Why not? She trusts me. She didn't need a lawyer. Isn't it true that anyone signing away this much control should have independent advice? I don't agree with that. You're not a lawyer, are you? No. So you're not qualified to determine what legal advice your mother needed. I was acting in her best interest. Were you? Let's talk about your financial situation. You received a significant inheritance through your wife last year, correct? That's private. Answer the question. Yes. And you purchased a new home, new vehicles, and quit your job? Yes. How much of that inheritance remains? Robert's attorney stood. Objection, irrelevant. It goes to motive, Your Honor. I'll establish relevance. The court reporter noted the objection. Ms. Chen continued. Mr. Blackwell, your mother's estate is worth approximately $1.2 million, correct? I don't know the exact. According to the financial disclosures you filed with the trust, yes or no? Approximately. 5% of that annually is $60,000. That's your trustee fee, correct? It's standard. That's more than you were making at your previous job, isn't it? Silence. Mr. Blackwell, yes. So taking control of your mother's assets provided you with income you no longer had, correct? That's not why I did it. But it's true? Yes. Ms. Chen let that hang in the air. One final question. You installed tracking software on your mother's devices without her knowledge, didn't you? I wanted to make sure she was safe. You wanted to monitor her movements without her consent, for her protection. You also entered her home without permission, didn't you? I have a key, you had a key. She changed the locks. Before she did, you entered her home and went through her belongings, correct? I checked on the house. You picked the lock on her back door after she made it clear she didn't want you entering, correct? Robert's composure cracked. I was concerned about her mental state. So concerned that you went through her private papers? I didn't, Mr. Blackwell. There are fresh scratches on the lock. My investigator documented them. Did you or did you not enter your mother's home without permission after she changed her locks? His attorney put a hand on his arm. Don't answer that. Ms. Chen smiled slightly. No further questions. When we left, Margaret was waiting in the hallway. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. How bad? She whispered. I don't know yet. But Ms. Chen looked satisfied. He cracked. The jury will see a man who took advantage of his mother's trust, who profited from controlling her money, and who violated her privacy when she tried to fight back. This is going to trial? I asked. Maybe not. After that deposition, I think they'll want to settle. She was right. 3 days later, Robert's attorney called requesting a settlement conference. We met in a mediation room, neutral territory. Robert sat across from me, looking smaller somehow, diminished. Jennifer wasn't with him. The mediator explained the process. We're here to find a resolution both parties can accept. Let's start with what each side wants. Ms. Chen spoke first. Mrs. Blackwell wants the trust dissolved and full control of her assets restored. Additionally, she wants compensation for attorney fees and emotional distress. Robert's attorney countered. Mr. Blackwell created this trust in good faith. However, in the interest of preserving family relationships, he's willing to discuss modifications. Modifications aren't enough, Ms. Chen said firmly. The trust must be dissolved entirely. That's not possible. It's irrevocable. It's irrevocable if it was properly executed. We believe it wasn't. We're prepared to prove undue influence, lack of informed consent, and financial exploitation. We have Mrs. Blackwell's cognitive assessment showing perfect competence. We have the deposition showing your client never explained key provisions. We have evidence he violated her privacy and monitored her without consent. Robert's attorney whispered to him. He shook his head. She whispered more urgently. Finally, he spoke, his voice tight. What does she want? I'd thought about this for days. I want my life back. I want my accounts. I want my house. I want you out of my finances entirely. I was trying to help you. The words came out before I could stop them. You were trying to help yourself. He flinched as if I'd struck him. Robert, you took everything from me, my money, my independence, my dignity. You watched me. You went through my home. You threatened to put me in a facility. My voice shook but didn't break. You stopped seeing me as your mother and started seeing me as an asset. That's not true. Then why did you do it, really? Silence filled the room, heavy and uncomfortable. Jennifer and he started, then stopped. We made some financial mistakes, I thought. I thought if I managed your money, I could fix things for all of us. By taking it from me? By protecting it, you don't understand how quickly money disappears. I was trying to preserve your estate. While paying yourself $60,000 a year? He looked away. The mediator intervened. Let's focus on solutions. Mr. Blackwell, are you willing to dissolve the trust? A long pause. If I do, I want immunity from any legal action. Ms. Chen looked at me. It's your decision, Helen. I studied my son across the table. The boy I'd raised, taught to ride a bike, helped with homework, celebrated with at his graduation. Somewhere along the way, that boy had become this man, someone who could rationalize taking from his own mother. I want the trust dissolved, I said slowly. I want all control returned to me. I want you to pay my attorney fees, and I want you to understand that what you did was wrong. I was trying. I know what you were trying to do. But intent doesn't erase harm. He nodded slowly, painfully. His attorney spoke. We agree to dissolve the trust, restore all assets to Mrs. Blackwell's name, and reimburse reasonable attorney fees. In exchange, Mrs. Blackwell agrees not to pursue criminal charges or civil damages. Ms. Chen looked at me. I nodded. Agreed. The paperwork took another week. Forms signed, accounts transferred back, control restored. Each document that returned to my name felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd thought lost. When everything was finalized, Ms. Chen called me to her office one last time. You won, she said simply. Did I? Your house is yours, your money is yours, your life is yours. Yes, Helen, you won. But winning felt complicated. I'd gotten my assets back, but I'd lost something else. The illusion that family meant safety, that love meant protection, that aging meant being cared for rather than managed. Margaret stayed with me for another week after the settlement. We fell into a comfortable rhythm: morning coffee, afternoon walks, evening conversations that stretched long past sunset. One night, as we sat on the porch watching fireflies, she asked the question I'd been avoiding. What are you going to do about Robert? What do you mean? Are you going to forgive him? I watched the small lights blink on and off in the darkness. I don't know yet. He's still your son, and I'm still his mother. But something broke between us that I don't know how to fix. She nodded, understanding. You don't have to fix it right away. Maybe not ever. Some things stay broken. That's a sad thought. Maybe, or maybe it's just honest. After she left, the house felt emptier, but also more solidly mine. I'd changed more than the locks. I'd changed my will, removing Robert as executor, naming Margaret instead. I'd set up my accounts with security measures he couldn't bypass. I'd installed my own security system, cameras that sent alerts to my phone when anyone approached. Some people might call it paranoia. I called it wisdom earned the hard way. Robert tried calling once about a month after everything was settled. I let it go to voicemail. Mom, it's me. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I know that's not enough. I know I hurt you. But I am sorry. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. I saved the message but didn't return the call. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Margaret was right. Some things stay broken, and that's not always a tragedy. Sometimes it's just the truth. 6 months passed. I settled into a new version of my life, one where I was more careful, more watchful, but also more myself than I'd been in years. I volunteered at the library again, helping with their literacy program. I joined a book club with women my age who'd also learned that aging didn't mean disappearing. I traveled to visit Margaret, spent a week in her guest room, laughing the way we used to as girls. My house stayed mine. My account stayed mine. My days stayed mine. And if there were nights when I woke suddenly, thinking I heard someone at the door, remembering the violated feeling of discovering I'd been monitored, watched, catalogued, well, those nights became less frequent with time. I thought often about what Ms. Chen had said. You won, and I suppose I had. But the victory felt more like survival than triumph. I'd kept what was mine, but at the cost of a relationship I'd thought was unbreakable. One afternoon in early autumn, I was working in my garden when a car pulled into the driveway. I looked up, trowel in hand, dirt on my knees. Robert stood there, hesitant, his hands in his pockets. Hi, Mom. I didn't stand immediately. Just looked at him, this man I'd raised, trying to see past the hurt to whatever remained underneath. Robert. Can we talk? I considered saying no. Considered telling him to leave, that he'd forfeited his right to my time when he'd forfeited his claim to my trust. But I was tired of anger, tired of feeling violated every time I thought of him. 5 minutes, I said. He sat on the porch steps, careful not to come too close. I'm in therapy, he began. Jennifer and I both are. We're trying to understand why you tried to steal from your own mother. He flinched but didn't look away. Yes. And what have you learned? That I'd convinced myself I was helping, that I'd built this whole story where you were declining and I was being responsible. But really, I was scared. Scared of what? Of not being able to provide for my family, of being a failure, he paused, struggling, of becoming you. The words stung, but I kept my voice steady. Explain that. You and Dad always struggled, always worried about money. I didn't want that for Jennifer and me. So when her father died and we got that money, I thought we'd finally be free. But we weren't. We just spent more. And when it was gone, I panicked. So you decided my money should solve your problem. I told myself I was protecting your estate. But yes, deep down, I was thinking about what would eventually be mine. He looked down at his hands. The therapist calls it anticipated inheritance syndrome. Adult children who start treating their parents' assets as if they're already theirs. And you never thought to ask me for help, to talk to me like an adult? I was ashamed, and I thought you wouldn't understand, that you'd judge me for spending Jennifer's inheritance so quickly. I set down my trowel. You're right, I would have, but I also would have helped if you'd asked honestly. Instead, you lied, you manipulated, you violated my privacy and tried to take everything I'd worked for. I know. I know isn't enough, Robert. What would be enough? I thought about that. Time and proof. You can't undo what you did, but you can show me over months and years that you've changed, that you see me as a person again, not just an obstacle between you and money. He nodded slowly. Can I try? You can try, but I won't be easy to convince, and I won't ever give you control of anything again, ever. I understand. Do you? Because the trust I had in you is gone, Robert, completely gone. You can't rebuild what you've destroyed. You can only build something different. I want to try, he said quietly. If you'll let me. I stood, brushing dirt from my knees. Then try, but from a distance. Call before you visit, ask before you come over, respect my boundaries, and understand that forgiveness isn't something you earn in a few conversations. It's something that might take the rest of my life. Okay. And Robert? I met his eyes. If you ever try anything like this again, I won't hesitate. I'll call the police, I'll press charges, and I'll cut you out of my life entirely. Do you understand? Yes. Good, now I have gardening to finish. He stood, uncertain, then walked back to his car. Before he got in, he turned. Mom, thank you for giving me a chance. I didn't answer, just watched him drive away, then returned to my roses. A year passed, then another. Robert called occasionally, never asking for anything, just checking in. I kept our conversations brief, cordial, distant. He sent cards on my birthday, on holidays, never pushed for more than I was willing to give. Jennifer called once to apologize. I accepted it but didn't invite her over. Some relationships can't survive betrayal, even with apologies. I thought often about what Margaret had said. Some things stay broken, and I'd learned to be okay with that. My relationship with Robert would never be what it was, but maybe, eventually, it could be something else. Something smaller, more careful, but honest. I was sitting on my porch one evening, 2 years after the settlement, when my neighbor Mrs. Patterson walked over. Helen, I hope I'm not intruding, but I wanted to ask your advice. Of course, what is it? She sat beside me, wringing her hands. My daughter wants me to sign some papers. She says they're to protect my house if I ever need nursing care, but I don't understand them and she gets impatient when I ask questions. My heart clenched. Have you read them carefully? I've tried, but the language is so complicated. Don't sign anything yet, I said firmly. Let me give you the name of my attorney. She can review them for you. I don't want to upset my daughter. I took her hand. I understand, but your daughter will be fine. The question is, will you be fine? Will you still have control of your own life after you sign? She looked at me with sudden clarity. You've been through something like this. Yes. What happened? So I told her. Not everything, but enough. The trust, the locked accounts, the violation of privacy, the long fight to get my life back. When I finished, she was crying softly. I thought I was the only one. I thought there was something wrong with me for feeling suspicious. There's nothing wrong with you. But there might be something wrong with what your daughter's asking you to do. Promise me you'll see a lawyer before you sign anything. I promise. After she left, I sat there as the sun set, thinking about all the women like us. Women who'd worked hard, saved carefully, built lives we were proud of, only to have our own children view us as obstacles rather than people. It happened more often than anyone wanted to admit. The slow erosion of dignity that comes with aging. The way society stops seeing us, stops listening, stops believing we're capable of making our own decisions. But I'd learned something important through all of this. Getting older doesn't mean becoming less. It means becoming more selective about who deserves your trust, more careful about protecting what's yours, more willing to fight for dignity even when the battle is exhausting. I'd lost a son, in a way, but I'd found myself. And between those two things, I chose myself. Dear listeners, thank you for staying with Helen's story. She wanted her story told because she knows, just like I know, that there are so many others out there going through the exact same thing right now. See, that's the thing about getting older in this world. People stop seeing you. They start treating you like you're invisible, or worse, like you're just an obstacle standing between them and what they think they deserve. Every year, countless older adults face financial exploitation from the very people who should be protecting them. Family members who convince themselves they're helping while actually helping themselves. It's called elder financial abuse, and it's one of the fastest growing crimes in our country. What makes it particularly heartbreaking is the complexity of emotions involved. These aren't strangers committing these acts. They're children, grandchildren, people we've loved and nurtured our entire lives. And that love makes us vulnerable. It makes us want to believe the best, to excuse behavior that shouldn't be excused, to trust when perhaps we shouldn't. If Helen's story resonated with you, like, subscribe, and leave a comment. I'd love to know where you're watching from. I want you to know a few things. First, you're not alone. If you're experiencing something similar, if someone in your family is pressuring you about finances or pushing you to sign documents you don't fully understand, you are not imagining things. Your instincts are valid. Second, you have rights. No one, not even your own children, has the right to take control of your assets without your full, informed consent. If you feel rushed, confused, or pressured, that's a sign to stop and seek independent advice. Third, it's okay to say no. It's okay to set boundaries with family members. It's okay to protect yourself, even if that protection hurts someone's feelings. Your dignity and independence matter. And finally, if you're on the other side of this story, if you're a younger person caring for an aging parent, please remember this: your parent is still a person, still capable, still deserving of respect and autonomy. Yes, there may come a time when they need help, but help should empower, not control. It should preserve dignity, not diminish it. The most powerful moment in Helen's story, to me, wasn't when she won her legal battle. It was when she stood in her garden and told her son that forgiveness might take the rest of her life. Because that's honesty, that's strength. She didn't pretend everything was fine. She didn't rush to restore a relationship that had been shattered. She simply stood in her truth and gave herself permission to heal at her own pace. Some relationships survive betrayal. Some don't, and both outcomes are okay. We're not required to forgive just because someone is family. We're not required to forget just because time has passed. What we are required to do is honor ourselves, protect ourselves, and refuse to let anyone make us feel small. Getting older is hard enough without the people we love making it harder. But as Helen learned, there's a kind of freedom that comes from surviving betrayal, a clarity about who you are and what you're worth, a willingness to stand alone rather than be diminished by others. If you're listening to this and you're worried about someone you love, reach out to them. Check in. Ask real questions and listen to the answers. Look for signs: sudden changes in financial access, isolation from friends, confusion about documents they've signed, family members who seem overly involved in their finances. And if you're listening to this and you recognize yourself in Robert's story, if you've been treating an aging parent as an obstacle or an asset rather than a person, please stop. Get help, see a therapist. Understand that your parents' money is not yours, even if you believe you'll inherit it someday. Even if you think you know better, even if you're scared about your own financial future. The right thing is rarely the easy thing, but it's always the thing we can live with when we look at ourselves in the mirror. Helen ended her story sitting on her porch, having chosen herself over a broken relationship with her son. Some might say that's sad. I say it's powerful. Because for too long, women especially have been taught to sacrifice themselves for family harmony, to be small so others can feel big, to give until there's nothing left. Helen refused that script, and in doing so, she gave herself the greatest gift possible, a life that remained fully her own until the very end. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope it reminds you that you are valuable, you are capable, and you are worth protecting, even if that protection comes with a cost. Take care of yourselves and remember, growing older is a privilege, not a diminishment. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise.